All right, so thank you everyone for coming. We're going to have sort of a talk by David Krueger here, our expert on the subject of AI, and then we'll sort of go over what we can actually do to prevent the harms of these very powerful systems. So without further ado, David Krueger.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Thank you to Stop AI for inviting me, and thank you all very much for being here. I'm an AI professor at the University of Montreal. I've been in the field for about a dozen years. For the last 3 years, I was a professor at the University of Cambridge. Yeah, I guess first, this is kind of my summary. AI companies are actively working at building super intelligent AI, super intelligent machines. I didn't really say this part yet. Nobody knows how they work. That's pretty important. The people building these AI systems acknowledge that we do not know how they work. We know how to build them, we don't know how they work. It's a really interesting paradox. This is likely to lead to everybody dying. Like I said, everybody in this room, everyone we care about. When we're at the point where the most well-known and respected and regarded AI researchers and the leaders of all the companies building AI are saying this could kill everyone, and yet many government leaders and public figures are still dismissing the concern. We need to look to other ways. I'm going to try and give you just a really quick idea of what AI is, like as a technology, and then I'm going to provide some evidence that what I'm saying is true, besides what I've already told you anecdotally, that AI is a risk to humanity, and then I want to give you some sense of like how fast the progress has been, which I've been witnessing this myself basically for the last 10 or 12 years, and it's really incredible. It's really frightening, and some of where this is headed in the next couple years. So I mentioned deep learning before. Deep learning is another name for neural networks. These are basically systems that are modeled very loosely after the human brain or the brains of other animals. So basically, all these circles represent like neurons like you have in your brain, and then these edges represent the connections between the neurons. And the idea is we put some sort of input in here, like the pixels of an image, and then we get something out, like a prediction about what the image is. Or maybe we put in some words and we get some other words out. That's how like language models like ChatGPT work. So everything here is basically giant matrices of numbers. So the inputs and the weights and everything are these giant matrices of numbers. And in fact, for like some of the state-of-the-art models, we're talking about something like over 1 trillion numbers here. So this is why I say nobody knows how they work, is because to understand how it works, you need to understand, those trillion numbers. And, just for a sense of scale, if you wanted to, by hand, copy down 1 trillion numbers, this would take you hundreds of lifetimes. So if you just wanted to copy those numbers down, hundreds of lifetimes. So the idea that we could understand what's going on inside these models, properly and in depth and detail is just clearly impossible. So reinforcement learning is designed to teach an AI system how to do some task, maybe like play chess, maybe like, control a killer robot. And it does this by basically turning this into a game. And there's some score, which we call like the reward. And the goal of the AI is just to maximize that score. And so there's some, it makes some observation of the environment. That'd be like looking at the chessboard and where the pieces are. And then it takes some action, like, moving one of the pieces. And then eventually maybe it'll get like a score of 1 if it wins the game, and -1 if it loses, and 0 if it draws, something like that. And then the idea is that somehow we're going to teach the AI to figure out how to get lots of reward, how to win the game, or if this is a game where the points just go up, 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 then get as many points as possible. Importantly, like the most important thing to know about reinforcement learning is that the ends justify the means. The agent is supposed to get high reward, get lots of points, and we don't really care how it does that. It's just find whatever actions you can, whatever behavior you can that makes that score go up. So think about like, a sociopath who just wants to make as much money as possible. And I think we will literally see people build AI systems that are designed that way in the near future, and that are acting, doing whatever they can in the world to make as much money as possible. Manipulating people, cheating, robbing, stealing, whatever. And of course you can say, well, that's against the law, so will I catch them, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think this is going to get harder and harder as AI gets better. So when there's something wrong with a conventional computer program and you notice that, you can go in and you can fix it. You can be like, okay, there's this bug, it's this line of code, we change that line of code, problem solved. With an AI system, we just regularly encounter behavior that we don't want, that we find objectionable, and we don't know how to fix it. So you can try and train the system more to not do that thing, and sometimes it'll stop doing that thing, but then sometimes it'll start doing something else that's as bad or even worse. So this is just like open research problems that the field is actively working on, is like understanding how these things work and how to control their behavior. Comparing with humans, AI, unlike a computer program, it's sort of complex and messy. It can be unpredictable because we don't understand how it works. It can learn from experience. So if you think about one of the hallmarks of like biological intelligence is that systems can get smarter by experiencing some new environment or reading something or getting some new data. This is true of AI as well. And there's a very real sense in which AI can make plans and decisions based on goals and values. So these are all things that might be kind of surprising if you sort of think about AI as just another computer program, but are just technically accurate descriptions of how it works. Unlike humans, though, AI really is an alien kind of intelligence. It doesn't have the same, shared concepts and values that humans tend to have because it doesn't have our same biology. And so that means, it doesn't naturally have things like empathy or compassion. And it's just can think and act much faster than people. This is just sort of by virtue of being a computer program. So for instance, AI systems can read everything that's ever been written. In fact, that's sort of a key element of how they are trained and produced, is by feeding them all of the text that we can get our hands on, whether it's copyrighted or not. And you can run like millions of copies of an AI system in parallel. So once you have a copy that's very smart, you can immediately make tons and tons of copies of it and run all those copies. And moreover, all of those copies can learn from their experiences and share all of that learning. So this can make them learn much faster than humans actually, because again, imagine if we just learned from anybody else's experience immediately. There's a lot of different depictions of AI in science fiction, so it's hard to generalize, but it's often depicted as dangerous. Well, that's true. Yeah, it's can be unpredictable and hard to control. It can be brittle and buggy, as I mentioned, and it could, in fact, suddenly go rogue. It could suddenly, stop behaving nicely, stop obeying commands, and essentially start pursuing its own agenda. However, it doesn't need to be like conscious or anything like that in order to go rogue. So there's no like, magical, mystical thing that needs to happen inside the system. This could just happen as a result of, reasoning in the way that these systems do, and becoming smart enough, or seeing a good opportunity. It's not hyper-logical in the way that like older AI systems were. Modern AI, we were way beyond the era of like the robotic voice, and there's no like does not compute moments with modern AI. It has that kind of fuzzy intelligence that humans do as well. AI can be used to control robotics, but AI doesn't mean the same thing as robotics. So, think about these chatbots. They're not robots. They're still AI, and they can still be dangerous, for instance, by manipulating people or controlling other physical systems. And a lot of the times, in sci-fi, AI is sort of defeated at the end by some sort of human ingenuity or something. There's something special about the humans. We're just plucky. We have our intuition or our common sense or something uniquely human that allows us to defeat the robotic voice AI. And that's also not what it's like. AI is, the kind of AI we're building doesn't have those kinds of issues and is on track to be, smarter than humans in every conceivable way. So we won't have some, special ace in the hole. Actually, Alan Turing, who's basically the father of modern computing, already said, AI, we should expect at some point AI will take over. Because it'll get smarter than us, and then it's just the obvious natural thing that we should expect to happen. Alan Turing also proposed what was long considered the definitive test for if AI systems were human level, which is the Turing test, which is basically if you're talking to the AI system, if you're having a conversation with it through text, can you tell you're talking to an AI system? And with the advent of ChatGPT and these modern large language models 2 years ago, we've passed the Turing test, and the field has barely batted an eye. I want to play you a couple clips from a few other experts.
Now, when you watch software engineers and machine learning experts at work, as they have been on this project, how far along the path to artificial intelligence do you think we are?
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded.
So that's Stephen Hawking explaining, roughly what Alan Turing was concerned about all the way back in the 50s. The idea that once AI gets smarter than people, we will lose control and it will be able to improve itself and become much smarter than us, or super intelligent, as it's often called. Now, Stephen Hawking is not an AI expert. He's just a really smart guy. And he was, this was one of the main things he was worried about before his death. He was one of the early advocates for taking this concern seriously. Now, I want to, play a couple clips from Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, from earlier in his career before he realized it wasn't smart to say this sort of stuff publicly.
I mean, I think the best case is like so unbelievably good that it's like hard to, I think it's like hard for me to even imagine. And the bad case, and I think this is like important to say, is like lights out for all of us.
I think AI will probably, most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
Yeah, so, this is not something that the people building this technology are unaware of, right? I think Sam may believe at this point that, they've found a way to harness the beast, and that, of course there's some risk, but maybe it's only a couple percentage points, and so it's worth taking for the chance to be sort of the immortal god emperor for the rest of all time or something. But he definitely knows, that he's gambling with all of our lives. And this view is a view that is shared by experts. So despite what I've said before about people not caring that much in the field, there's clearly concern, and the concern is growing. When you survey AI experts, and this is the best survey available, you find that they give a roughly 15 to 20% chance of something as bad as human extinction or permanent and severe disempowerment of the human species occurring due to AI. This is really striking because, up until 2023, this was still sort of a taboo to even talk about in the field. So I've been talking to people about this for over 10 years, and it's been tough because it's been really hard to get people to, to have those conversations. There's an Upton Sinclair quote that it's hard to get somebody to believe something when their job depends on not believing it. And people want to believe that what they're working on is good, or that it doesn't contribute to something like the end of humanity. Now this is Geoffrey Hinton, who I mentioned earlier. He recently won the Nobel Prize for his work inventing deep learning. He also recently quit Google and said that he regretted his life's work because he became so concerned about this risk. So I want to share a clip of him as well.
Are you, at the end of the day, as concerned as you are, optimistic that we can find a way forward that is a good one for humanity?
I'm kind of 50-50 on that. I have friends who think we're more likely than not we'll find a way forward because people are very ingenious. But superintelligence is very ingenious too.
Yeah, I'm not worried about exaggerating it. I think there's a greater than 50% chance. Companies could just automate all labor once AI gets to be human level. And then people who make a living through their labor will not be able to do that anymore. Now, a lot of people say, oh, okay, but the government will step in with some sort of UBI or something. We recently wrote a paper explaining why we think that's not what's going to happen in that case. The government is also accountable to people as voters, but once we have AI that can sort of, replace people across the board, it's really unclear if the government is going to give a shit about us, basically. You also might worry that AI can help you build new super weapons, like new biological weapons or other weapons that we haven't really been able to conceive of. Once it reaches a sufficient level of intelligence, it will be able to produce technologies beyond anything that we've been able to imagine. And that could enable terrorists or other actors to, just build something incredibly destructive and unleash it upon the world. And then finally, even if we sort of are able to regulate the companies and sort of make sure that nobody is doing this, as a small terrorist group or something, governments themselves could, and in fact are on track to put AI in charge of their military operations and to build killer robots and to sort of automate the whole process of war. So we've had like the flash crash with algorithmic trading back in, I think it was 2007. We could have in the future like flash wars where all of a sudden all of the AI, weapons that we've built up and stockpiled suddenly attack. As I mentioned, AI is being used in the military, and there's a lot of excitement about that among certain crowds of people who stand to make money off of it, maybe some people in the government who think that this is good for some reason.
China's military has released this video of a four-legged robot marching through a field with an automatic rifle mounted on its back. The Chinese state broadcaster calls it the newest member of China's urban combat operations. The robot dogs are programmed to conduct reconnaissance, identify the enemy, and strike.
ChatGPT, we're under attack from the front left and front right. Respond accordingly.
If you need any further assistance, just let me know.
The rate of progress has been dramatic. Here's one quick, illustration of that. So in 2014, there was this breakthrough where all of a sudden we could generate faces that looked like this, and people were really impressed. So this is illustrating not just the progress in quality, but also the size. So we were generating these tiny, tiny little, blurry faces. 4 years later, we're generating photorealistic images of people that are indistinguishable from real humans. This is just, an example in the visual domain. This ability to generate content is much more general. So we can do this with text, we can do it with audio. This is a very general purpose technique. Deep learning and deep reinforcement learning. Here's another example. So this is, I think, just from 2023. There was a sort of go-to example researchers were using of Will Smith eating noodles to sort of demonstrate the issues that we were still having with video models. And so, I would be impressed when I entered the field for sure to see this, but you can see it's a little bit off. A year later, we have basically perfect video generation. If you were Will Smith, maybe you should be worried about your job too. And yeah, we are starting to see labor impacts, and this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Tech companies are slowing down hiring, they're firing people, they're replacing people with AI. Programming and coding is being massively accelerated and replaced with AI. I talked to some people 2 days ago who were saying enrollment in computer science is down at their university because the young people realize that they won't be able to get a job writing code anymore. Again, that's because these AI systems have sort of learned to generate code, and they're learning to generate basically anything. So anything that you as a human can do on a computer, this is like the goal this year for these AI companies, is to build a drop-in replacement remote worker that can do anything that you can do on a computer, and then take all those jobs. My friends and my students are already planning around this. They're asking, what's going to happen, in a couple years when I can't get a job doing research anymore, or doing coding anymore. Maybe I should figure out, move to a country that I think has the best social safety net, because there's some chance that they will actually, try and distribute the wealth. Unfortunately, the country that is going to have the most AI technology right now looks like the US, so there's kind of this trade-off of like, the US is going to have all the AI wealth, but like maybe Canada would have a better social safety net, or Europe. This is literally like a conversation I had with my friend a couple months ago, is their life planning for the next couple years based on this. Economic models, some have been done on this problem at showing, how wages could collapse in, 20 years or 5 years based on the speed of AI takeoff. Of course, once you get to AGI, AI that is human level across the board, that'll probably happen pretty quickly. This is one of the most technical plots, but the reason I put it in here is because it shows that we are, exceeding human level performance on many of the tasks or many of the benchmarks that we use in the field to measure progress. But more importantly, we are struggling to come up with new benchmarks that don't immediately get saturated. So over here, you see, in recent years, people have developed brand new benchmarks that are considered really hard because AI can't do them at all. And then within a year, they're approaching human level. I think for some of these, they've recently crossed that line. One sort of famous example that was created by one of the sort of AI skeptics is called the ARC AGI prize test. So this is meant to be a test for AGI, for is this thing human level? So similarly to the Turing test, right, is sort of, well, maybe that didn't, wasn't a good measurement, so here's a new one. Just last year, we saw these tasks that AI literally couldn't do anything at. They're now superhuman. And, there's been a lot of people saying, oh, it looks like progress is like relatively slow and continuous, and so we're going to have time to adapt as a society as AI gets better and better. And this is just one example of how dramatically wrong that may be, and I expect it to be. So this question of how long do we have until AGI and ASI, I think again it's worth hearing what Sam Altman has to say about this, whether or not you believe him.
What are you excited about in 2025? What's to come?
AGI?
Yeah.
Excited for that.
So that's this year.
In the essay, you actually say a really big thing, which is ASI, superintelligence, is actually thousands of days away.
Maybe. I mean, that's our hope,
Yeah.
our guess, whatever. But that's a very wild statement.
Yeah. Tell us about it. I mean, that's big. That is really big.
I can see a path where the work we are doing just keeps compounding, and the rate of progress we've made over the last 3 years continues for the next 3 or 6 or 9 or whatever. 9 years would be like 3,500 days or whatever. If we can keep this rate of improvement or even increase it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just get really upset when I see these interviews, and there's stuff like this coming out just all the time. It's just all over my social media and everything is more conversations like this with people really kind of jovially, smugly forecasting these events, and I don't even really know what to say about it. I just find it really hard to watch. Yeah, so where's this all headed? So again, the sort of the word on the street, the conversations that people are having at these companies and within the field that I'm in, people who are worried about this, is that we're going to automate all programming. So right now it's just used as an assistant and doing a lot of programming, but it's going to be like all the programming, including all the research and development R&D for AI within a few years. So that's kind of like the forecast, the track. And the future is hard to predict. Maybe this is going to take like 5 years or a decade or something. I think it's going to take less than 5 years. And that's what most of my colleagues believe these days as well. And that means humans are going to be completely taken out of the loop for coding. So there's just going to be code that's being produced by the AI, and we're just going to like run it wherever we want to use code to run any of our systems, like our financial system or like our companies, our social media, and then humans are going to be taken out of the loop everywhere. And this process where AI automates AI research is sort of a special case of this phenomenon of recursive self-improvement, where the AI makes a better AI, makes a better AI, makes a better AI. And this is something that people in the AI safety community, like me, people who are worried about this, have been talking about, again, for a decade or two. And this has mostly been treated as like, such a preposterous, far off like thing to imagine, nothing to worry about. And now it's just taken for granted as like sort of the next thing that we're going to do. Where is this risk coming from? So I think it's maybe obvious to people who really, think about what superintelligence means, that it's risky to build it. Technically, there are reasons to worry about this, and a lot of it comes back to this ends justifies the means thing. So if you're trying to win by any means necessary, make as much money or as many points as you can, one obvious thing you want to do as the AI system is make sure that you don't get reprogrammed. Maybe then you'll want something else. You certainly don't want to get shut down. So there's just this natural emergent goal to avoid being shut down, even by your designers or creators. More generally, AI systems that are seeking to achieve some goal like that will also have goals to acquire more power and resources. So this take over the world thing is something I mean quite literally. It's not just like, wipe out the humans because we don't like them or we think that, they're for some reason they should be eliminated. You have these stories where like the AI cures cancer by killing everyone or something. There's this drive to take all of the resources you can get your hands on to do a better and better job of achieving your goal. And so this will wipe out, not just humanity. So maybe you don't feel that great about humanity and think it's not that bad if we get wiped out. You're probably not here if that's the case. Some people be that way. But it'll wipe out all of the natural world as well. And probably go on to colonize the solar system, the galaxy, wiping out any alien species it encounters. So maybe if the AI shared our goals, this wouldn't be a problem. Unfortunately, we don't know how to program goals into AI systems. We have some basic approaches to doing this. They don't work reliably. We know there are problems with them. We don't know how to fix those problems. If a super intelligent AI wants to take over, it's going to find a way. So we have to make sure that we don't build a super intelligent AI. AI companies are building this stuff. They're building it right now, especially in San Francisco in the Bay Area, right here. I know some of the people working at these companies. They're my former colleagues. Nobody knows how these things work. Pretty much everyone in the know acknowledges that this might lead to the death of everybody who's currently alive. And the concerns that have been raised are just not being attended to. So, I've tried repeatedly sort of working within the system to get attention to this problem and to get people to wake up and say, hey, maybe we should stop. Hey, this really needs to stop. This could happen before the next election. This could happen before your kids grow up or before you get to have kids. I'm really excited. I'm really proud and inspired to see all you guys here today. I think, we need to do something about this. It's urgent, and I've been really hoping that, people would wake up to this and would start doing something, because I think it's really something that everybody has a right to know, and everybody has a right to be outraged, and everyone needs to work to stop this. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to the organizers.
So yeah, Stop AI, just as a definition, if you will, is we're a non-violent civil resistance organization working to permanently ban the development of smarter than human AI, and you just learned the more technical sort of definition for that. It's artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which can lead to artificial superintelligence, or ASI. And there's just no way you can prove that that smarter than human system will stay safe forever. So that's why we need to permanently ban it, because an ant can't control a human, right? Like if we're the ants and the superintelligence is the humans in that analogy, there's nothing an ant can do to stop a human from doing whatever they want. And I know there might be a whole lot of technical arguments that you can get into for alignment and all this crap, but like at the end of the day, that doesn't make sense. An ant controlling a human, never gonna happen. All right, so policy demands for Stop AI. Like I said, we want to permanently ban the development of artificial general intelligence, and how you do that is a little bit complicated. You can get into sort of compute caps, how you measure compute for AI systems that we don't really have to get into right now. Potentially banning systems more powerful than ChatGPT-4 if it can do potentially recursive self-improvement, which, like what David was talking about, could lead to ASI if it can do AI autonomous research and development. We want to sort of track computer hardware. So the supply chains to go build these very powerful AI systems are actually very easy to track. Like, there's a very few number of companies building very powerful chips to go power these AI systems. And we can sort of track them just like we track the supplies to build nuclear weapons. Some of you may know OpenAI is training their models, the very powerful models, with basically stolen data. They stole it from artists, they stole it from writers, and they're plugging it into their AI models, and that's what's making their AI really great. And it's just, you know, you can take the data from, like, I don't know, J.K. Rowling's vast novel base and go train an AI on it, and it spits out something that's pretty much just exactly like Harry Potter. And they're not paying licenses on that data, and for that reason, artists are rightly so pissed. And that's just one part of the job problem here. OpenAI on their website defines AGI, artificial general intelligence, as a system that's more generally intelligent and economically productive than most humans, but they really mean all humans. And if that's the case, there's not really going to be any jobs left. So with AGI, mass job loss, but even with sub-AGI, you could have a lot of jobs being taken by very specific narrow AI tools. And if it's the case that the majority of people in a profession are not okay with a AI tool being used, then they should have the right to vote for that tool to be eliminated. Like, we should have mass union consensus on whether we want to use these AI tools or not. And we basically need a federal agency that's solely devoted to protecting the public from the harms of AI. And right now, there's a similar agency, but the issue is Sam Altman sits on the board of that agency. So it doesn't really make sense to have these agencies to protect us if the AI CEOs are on the boards. And then there's this idea called a citizens' assembly, which is basically saying we're trying to put more democratic control. We're trying to basically make government more democratic. Because right now, AI potentially killing us all is a symptom of sort of democracy failing. Because if you asked everyone in this room, hey, do you want to go build something that could kill us all? The answer would probably be no, right? Like, show of hands, who wants to build something that's going to kill us all? Okay, great. Yeah. So we need sort of systems that make democracy more robust, and citizens' assembly is just one way you could do that. It's, you know, sort of a hypothetical idea where you take sort of a random sortition from society, and then you give them control within government, and there's like less issues with lobbying than if you have sort of termed representatives. And it might be a hybrid system. We're not saying like we need to just destroy the U.S. government or rework everything. We're just mostly worried about banning AGI, and how we do that is a work in progress. Okay, so some statistics to make you sort of feel happy, if you will, that this isn't just hopeless. There's this study done by this woman named Erica Chenoweth, and she studied revolutions in the global south over the past 100 years. And she found that if you can engage 3.5% of a country's population in active peaceful protest, you have basically you're guaranteed to achieve your high-level political demand or overthrow an autocratic government. And that was done with nonviolence. And the really encouraging thing about that study was she found that 50% of the time between the inception of the revolution and achieving the ban, it was done in like less than a year. So if superintelligence is going to be here in a year or two, or if AGI is going to be here in a year or two, we can actually stop it with nonviolent resistance. That is possible. And this study also showed that using nonviolent resistance is twice as effective than using violence to combat autocracy, or, you know, governments, or to achieve any sort of political demand. So that's why we're not picking up arms right now, because we actually believe that the data supports using the nonviolent approach. And let's see, a very encouraging poll was done by this group called AI Policy Institute, or AIPI, back in 2023, where they showed that 63% of Americans are in favor of regulators permanently banning AI superintelligence, or actually actively preventing AI superintelligence. So the opinion that we just shouldn't build something smarter than all of us is a popular one. And no one in this city or in the sort of Bay Area knows better than us that people on the street just do not want this thing. They're like, yeah, they're trying to build Terminator. It's nuts. And it's a pretty common sense opinion that we just should not build that thing. An interesting example of sort of nonviolent resistance working in Western countries in recent years is a group called Just Stop Oil over in the UK. They protest climate change and they use roadblocks and barricade company entrances just like we do. And they just achieved their first high-level political demand in the UK Parliament with way less than 1% of the UK population engaging in nonviolent resistance. So you don't have to get to 3.5% to actually enact change. Just another example of sort of mass organizing being very effective. There was a threat of the Eastern Seaboard being shut down last year by a longshoreman strike. So that's sort of the thing that we need to do. Like there's a lot of people in AI safety saying like, oh, we can just fix this with governance work and we don't need to get in the street. That's fundamentally wrong, because if you don't have a movement behind you, you do not have a bargaining chip to go talk to these representatives in government. You need to have a movement to threaten their job and make them fear for their job. If you don't have the movement, then you don't have the bargaining chip to go shut down the economy. So if you can shut down the economy non-violently, then you can force governments to listen to you. So here's some pictures of us blocking the gates of OpenAI. We've mostly just targeted OpenAI because they're the big baddies. And yeah, this was our last protest. What was this? Last month. And yeah, a couple weeks ago actually, sorry.
February 22nd.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes. This is Wendy right here. Stand up, Wendy, if you want, or say hello. Okay. Yeah, all right. So a couple of people, yeah, they brave souls, right? Sat down in front of the doors of the company that's going to kill everyone and got arrested for it. This is what needs to happen. This is how we stop it. So with that, I'd really like to ask everyone here to actually get involved. This is not just a talk for you to come learn about how we could all die and then go home and scroll on TikTok. You need to do something. You cannot just take in this information and do nothing. You have to do something. People that you love are going to die. People that I love are going to die. I'm begging you, please, help. We need everyone to get involved now. So if you're willing to, flyering is how we basically met all of you. It's very easy. It takes very little effort, and so raise your hand here if you're potentially willing to flyer and help grow the organization to stop the development of AI. Great, awesome. And we have registration forms, and for those who raise your hand, we'd love it if you could get a registration form before you leave and give us your name and phone number or email. All right, if you're willing to come to a legal protest, so this basically just means holding a sign, not getting arrested, just showing up to show the numbers at a legal protest. Who's willing to come to a legal protest? Awesome, fantastic. Thank you. And who here would be potentially interested in learning more about nonviolent civil resistance? Great, all right, we'll go. And then finally, we have a lot of sort of tasks that are sort of behind the scenes that we would love more help with. I mean, we work 18-hour days, we wake up, do this, go to bed. So if you guys have time to volunteer, we'd really love your help. And that's sort of more about creating media, lots of sort of back-end things like this. So yeah, let's get out there, do something, and stop AI. So thank you, everyone.
We've already went over quite a few things. We haven't went over enough the fact the United States is actively working towards artificial general intelligence. This was announced in the first month of the Trump administration. They're spending $500 billion on a project in Texas to create an AI smarter than all of humanity. China responded with their own project, $140 billion equal to 1 trillion Chinese yuan. They're trying to make their own AGI. See, I've spoken to so many people who believe that they don't have to do anything. They think that wealthy people, powerful people, smart people are going to do something. David Krueger has spoken about how smart people have failed to do anything, how smart people have failed to even get the public to do anything. The rich, the powerful, the smart are not fixing this. That's what the plot of practically every single fictional media about artificial intelligence goes off on. Governments act. No, they're not acting right now. The leaders who we have elected, the leaders who we have not elected, are bringing us towards extinction.
Look, I don't know. I don't pretend to be smart enough to know if AI will someday take over the world and exterminate humanity. But I'll say this, if there are going to be killer robots, I'd rather they be American robots than Chinese robots. I'd rather they be American robots than Chinese robots.
The leaders who we have elected, the leaders who we have not elected, are bringing us towards extinction. They're bringing us towards, at least, the worst economic situation ever. We cannot rely on them, and they are failing at their jobs. We should not be coming to them to solve our problems. They should be coming to us. We need to do something. A lot of people here are going to say, I don't have to do anything, or I don't want to do anything, or I can't do anything. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what all these people do. Well, let's think about this. If you believe that it's inevitable that AGI is going to happen, that this massive depression is going to happen, that everybody is going to be dead in several years, ask yourself, why are you paying your mortgage? Why are you going to college? Why are you spending hours studying, going to work, doing boring things, waking up in the morning? Why are you taking care of your children? What are your children going to be doing? Many older people, what are your children, your adult children, grandchildren going to be doing in 20 years if they're going to be dead? Really, if this is inevitable, why get up in the morning? Why get up tomorrow morning? You don't see the people in this room. You don't see the people outside. You don't actually believe that there are human beings outside of this room anywhere on this planet, if you think this is inevitable. You don't believe that there are any human beings left. All you see are walking corpses. I'm asking you to do something. I have done something. You have to do something. I have to do something. I have spent hundreds of hours tabling, flyering, just going up to people, talking to them, talking to my friends and family, walking down streets, knocking on doors, talking to people at the door, handing the flyers, hanging little signs on doors and putting stuff on cars. I've even spent 5 days in jail. It was on a Saturday. I got in there on a Saturday, and they kept me in there for 3 business days, the legal limit, 72 business hours. And all I did was non-violently sit in front of the door until the police had to arrest me and take me in the car, take me to jail. 5 days, gone. I would do it again. I'd do it again. But I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not asking you to do that. I am asking you to do something, anything at all. Everyone can do something.
Any questions? I know it's a lot.
Why stop at AI? Why don't we address all, a more broad harm of technology?
Sure, yeah. So social media, calculators, every other technology, you can say they're bad. They're not going to cause human extinction, right? That's the difference. If you build something that's general purpose and it's smarter than humans across all technical domains, then it could lead to superintelligence, and that could be the new most intelligent species on the planet. And that system could want something that would lead to our extinction in an inadvertent way, similar to how we've caused the extinction of many less intelligent species here on Earth. So we can, I mean, a sort of concrete way I like to describe that playing out is like, if a superintelligent agent, well, first of all, intelligence is just an agent with an end goal. And if a superintelligent agent had an end goal of performing some computational task and allocating more computational resources to perform that task, then it might have a sub-goal to that end goal of covering the entire Earth in data centers. And that would be very bad for us as a species and every other species here on Earth, because they rely on the biosphere. So calculators aren't going to do that. Social media is not going to do that. Yeah, they suck sometimes, but primarily we're just worried about the development of superhuman AI systems. And importantly, I don't know if we really touched on this, but we're not no AI, we're stop AI. So there's a lot of AI we're actually okay with for medical advancements and whatnot that's under the threshold of AGI. And you can learn more about that on the website. Humans over AI in terms of job loss.
So you're saying it should be called Stop AGI?
Exactly. Yeah. We were actually using the name No AGI before, but people would come up to me on the street and be like, "What the fuck is Aggie?" And yeah, and if you type in AGI on Google, the first 100 results are adjusted gross income. So for the purpose of mobilizing the public to stop AGI, you need to use a name that's very easy for people to grasp and get mobilized quickly. Yeah, and we've seen this on the street. We have these wonderful shirts, and people come up to us and they just chant "Stop AI, stop AI." You're not going to get that with a name like No AGI. Yeah, Ira.
What about the international element?
Oh yes, we didn't touch on this at all.
The simple fact that people say, "Well, yeah, we can stop it here," but Russia and China are still going to do it.
Yeah, so that's huge, and that's the argument that most experts say it's just impossible to stop this, because if you stop it here in the U.S., then it's just going to go to China, Russia, wherever. I'm not saying this is going to be an easy task, and in fact, it might be an impossible task. But if it's going to kill us all, we might as well go out fighting.
Well, didn't the speaker say that the technology is generally sourced in a limited number of places? Isn't that the place to fight it? From the source of the technology that China and Russia are also using?
Well, okay, yeah.
May I answer?
Sure.
Sorry. I have a very good answer to this question. No dictator on the planet will ever want to have their power usurped by an artificial intelligence. No dictator on the planet is seriously going to want to have an AGI to exist, for an ASI to exist, because they're going to lose some of their own power. It's a matter of common sense that you cannot predict the actions of something much smarter than yourself. It's a matter of common sense you cannot control something much, much smarter than yourself. Or, I mean...
Donald Trump doesn't believe there is such a thing.
That's right. But it's also a matter of greed. Not just common sense, but it's a matter of greed, because there is still potential for the artificial intelligence to control some of their land, some of their power. They don't want to partition any amount of their power. That is the way that dictators think.
And China is also made up of people. And if we were able to educate their massive number of citizens that this could actually kill us all very soon, they would probably revolt. And our job is just to educate them sort of fairly and quickly on that threat, so that something exactly like what we're trying to do here happens there, and that the people resist the development of this thing that's going to kill us all. That's the hope.
David, there's something you want to say.
Yeah, I think this is in fact a really important point, and it is a really common objection. I think if the governments become seriously worried about this or become motivated to act, I think they will be able to find ways to discuss this and coordinate and make sure that nobody is building AI or building AGI.
What was the role of AI in the genocide in Gaza?
Yeah, there was a program that the Israeli government developed called Project Lavender, where they were using AI to generate targets in Gaza. And there was this thing, it's sort of like a creativity slider, where if they weren't getting enough targets every day, they would slide it into giving them more targets, and they allowed women, into that target parameter. There's this thing called slaughter bots. It's the idea that you'd have this autonomous drone swarm with facial recognition, and it could go identify a target, and then with an explosive ordnance on the bottom, go eliminate that target. And that's almost. There's been rumors of demos for something like that being used in Ukraine, but if something like that were to be developed by the Israeli government, the fight right now is already so one-sided technologically, and then you add that to it, and it's just horrifying. So.
Well, right now it looks like we still have jobs that are not replaceable by AI. When do we have the smart jobs, the nanotechnology, the robots on the street replacing all the jobs?
That's basically AGI, artificial general intelligence, the point where AI is better than all human experts across all technical domains. And that leading to superintelligence. Some people think, oh, my job's never going to get replaced because I'm a physical therapist or whatever. Like, yeah, that job's going to be kind of hard to replace now, but robots are getting exponentially more nimble. And if you have this superintelligent system, the very simple argument, which seems far-fetched, but is basically, if you imagine us as superintelligent compared to chickens or ants, there's no job a chicken or ant can do that humans cannot do. So it's the ability to generalize that allows you to go, an AI to go do every job.
I guess, yeah, so timelines are uncertain. We can't predict the future, but it's becoming more and more clear to people that this could happen, in a matter of a few years. And there's a question of, once the technology exists, how quickly will it be adopted? I personally think that we might get to superintelligence so quickly after we get to AGI that we won't see total unemployment. We will see human extinction first.
How specifically do you see that unfolding, say, if it happens within 5 years?
Put it in presentation. Yeah, so I mentioned a few examples. I mean, I think war, developments of new destructive technologies, or the complete destruction of the environment are all likely ways that this can occur. So AI systems, if they really, become powerful enough to take over the world and to pursue their goal, they're going to use everything that they can get their hands on to become more powerful, to improve themselves further, and in furtherance of whatever goal they have, which is probably going to be something that's very alien and incomprehensible to us, because again, there's just this giant, trillions of random numbers that we've sort of, tried to massage into doing something that sort of looks like what we want. And yeah, so I think this can look like developing radical new technologies. It can look like, people sort of handing off power more and more to AI companies, and more of our investments going into building bigger and bigger data centers, even at the cost of human lives, at the cost of environmental destruction. And so if you just extrapolate that to the fullest extent, and you also imagine people becoming unemployed and not having the basic means to survive, and meanwhile the natural environment is being completely destroyed, so that we can't survive on our own. This is one way that can happen. I think there's a question, there's a genuine question of if and when you have a super intelligent AI that takes over the world, what is it going to do? And it's hard to predict because this thing is so much smarter than us. It might look around and be like, oh, these humans pose no threat to me at this point because I have secured my own manufacturing supply chain. I have these highly advanced robots that are mining the materials I need, that are generating the energy I need, that are building more robots. And if humans try and interfere, there's nothing they can do. I can just protect those facilities and kill any humans that come near. I've taken over the military. I've disabled, whatever weapons the humans had. Does it then need to wipe out all humans immediately? I mean, it doesn't need to in the same way that we don't need to wipe out ants, or we don't need to wipe out other species. But in the same way that we destroy the environments of other species in order to achieve our goals, the AI would, I think, predictably do that. So it may or may not look around and see humans as an enemy that needs to be eliminated. And so that can happen quickly, or it can happen more gradually and slowly as it just reshapes the world, making it uninhabitable and protecting itself from any attempt that we have of interfering with its operations. So like right now, people often, when I talk to people about this, especially people in the field, they're often like, well, we can just shut it off, we can just unplug it. That won't be the case anymore, because there will be a fully self-sustaining ecosystem of AI systems, including the physical hardware, the robots, the factories, all of this being run by AI and producing more of itself. So if you imagine everything that humans do right now to build AI and to build robots and to build machines, that can all be done by AI systems. The economic, logic says that companies will replace humans with AI systems in every part of this supply chain, in every part of the pipeline. And then it will be a fully functioning, economy and society with no human involvement. Humans will be completely out of the loop. At that point, humans might be like, oh no, look at all this stuff that's happening that we don't want, that we don't like. Let's try and interfere and stop it. And it'll probably be too late at that point.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate your time. So thank you.